If I have to make a bold statement that sleep is one of the most potent anti-inflammatory activity one will ever do. Sleep is one of the most potent immunomodulatory activity one would ever do in their lifetime. If at all sleep and inflammation are the sleep and immunity or autoimmunity is the biggest inflammation are the problem that we see currently. And sleep regulates both of them, inflammation and modulates your immunity at the same time. Why don't we time this, which doesn't cost you a penny to do it proper?
What if I told you that the same mindset that builds championship teams also builds an extraordinary life? The same discipline that drives elite performance to greatness is the discipline that unlocks a longer, stronger, and more resilient future. This is where peak health meets peak performance, where we explore the science of longevity and the mindset of greatness. Because your legacy isn't just what you leave behind, it's what you show up with every single day. This is the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. I'm Zach Dancel, your host. Welcome back to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast, where peak health meets peak performance. And we challenge the modern narrative on what it means to truly live well. Today's episode is special. We're going deep into a system of medicine that's over 5,000 years old, yet feels more relative today than ever. We're talking about Ayurveda, the science of life. I'm joined by two incredible guests, both experts in Ayurvedic medicine, who have spent years bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and modern science. Together, we'll explore how Ayurveda views the body, the mind, and longevity through an entirely different lens, one rooted in balance, energy, and self-awareness. Dr. Sheila Patel is a board-certified family physician and former chief medical officer of Chopra Global, an instructor of Ayurveda and leads the Chopra Ayurvedic Health Certification Program, and has contributed extensively to research on mind-body therapies. Dr. Sheila is a sought-after national and international keynote speaker, bridging the unique blend of Western medicine and integrative healing practice to help people reconnect themselves, their bodies, and their purpose. Dr. Suhas is a leading Ayurvedic physician in the U.S. and director of Ayurvedic Healing, an integrative wellness center in California. He has served as the advisor of Chopra Global and Chopra Foundation and on the boards of national and international Ayurvedic societies. A prolific author and educator, Dr. Suhas is recognized for bridging traditional Ayurvedic medicine with modern science to promote holistic health and longevity. Together, Dr. Sheila and Dr. Suhas are passionate about helping people live fully by integrating Ayurveda, mindfulness, and conscious living into daily life. Dr. Sheila and Dr. Suhas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Zach. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
So let's just set the foundation, right? Ayurveda is often considered the original holistic medical system, a framework that connects the mind, the body, the spirit, thousands of years before, modern medicine, what we call today, right? Functional medicine or longevity medicine. Ayurveda was considered the original holistic medical system. For the listeners who've never heard that word or may have heard it but truly don't know what it means, Dr. Suhas, can you help us understand what Ayurveda actually means at its core?
Well, you're absolutely right. Ayurveda is one of the most ancient and most comprehensive system of healthcare that is known to humanity. The word itself comes from the original Sanskrit language, which is one of the oldest language also known to humanity, which is the mother of all Indo-European languages. The word Ayurveda is composed of two different words, Ayu and Veda. Ayu means life, Veda means knowledge or science. So it simply means how you live your life and what the effect are on your personal health and well-being and everything that you attract or fail to attract in life. So it is a philosophical based kind of a medical science, which is very detailed, and all the concept that we talk about currently in personalized medicine, in the lifestyle medicine, in functional medicine are all originating from the understanding of human being as a replica of Mother Nature. So it's truly a natural medical science. How you live, the choices that you make affect your physical health, and the corrections that you do with the faulty patterns of diet and behavior that can be remedied with understanding of Ayurveda. I think it's a fascinating way to understand the limitations of the current modern Western medicine and the diet, the nutrition, the lifestyle modification, herbs, herbal intelligence, and using these formulations properly, coupled with maybe timely detoxification techniques. All of that is something which is becoming more like a new age medicine, even though it is one of the most ancient medicine. But the way we practice nowadays, it is completely validated and backed by the latest science. Dr. Sheila, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I think that was beautiful, and I initially my training is in the Western medical model, which has wonderful tools, of course, we know, but we also have realized that it's not the best system for prevention of chronic disease, and even some of the treatments really have potential side effects, or they don't work in everybody. So after about 10 or 15 years in conventional practice, I started realizing I didn't have all the answers for everybody, and the training that I got just gave me some limited tools. So I started exploring, and integrative medicine was really blossoming at that time. This was, 15 plus years ago. And my parents come from India, so I kind of knew about Ayurveda, but I thought it was home remedies and things like that. But I came back to it because I realized my mom used to do things in the kitchen to help us get better. And can we use some of those tools now? And what it took me on was a wonderful journey to, I ended up working, as you mentioned, at the Chopra Center here in California, and learned Ayurveda as a complete and very sophisticated healing system that addresses mind, body, spirit, but also that can be made very practical and simple for people. It's simple things that you do every day that can shift us more toward health or toward disease. So it's been a wonderful complement to, I still see patients in a primary care setting, but it's allowed me to really personalize. As Dr. Suhas mentioned, it's a personalized system. And although some of the terms and the language are different, they come from Sanskrit, as he mentioned, they really help us explain these patterns of human, both psychology and physiology, so that we can decide what's best for each person. So it's a very sophisticated way of understanding personalized medicine and lifestyle medicine. And as he mentioned, every year that goes by in the science, I like to keep up on the latest, scientific findings. They really validate everything that Ayurveda has been teaching for thousands of years. So that's been fun.
Yeah, no, it's wild to think that 5,000 years ago, right? They already understood the individuality of medicine, right? That everyone has their own body, their own mind body, blueprint per se, right? I think that's what they call the doshas. Is that how you pronounce it?
Dosha, dosha.
Doshas, right? So I just think that it's wild that they already knew back then, and it was really the first model of preventive medicine. Focusing on maintaining that alignment. Before imbalances even show up. So a lot about, what we talk today about being proactive and being preventative, right? Making sure, what over at Nava, and just so you guys, I'm not sure if you guys knew, Nava also has a meeting in Sanskrit of, I believe it's beauty or tune, like basically fresh and young, which is one of the reasons why we went with that name. But going back to what I was saying is that, um, it was one of the preventative, first models of preventative medicine, which we're seeing a lot more today, right? These new terms of longevity medicine, functional medicine. Ayurveda was truly the original way.
And I think the it's interesting that you use the word legacy and longevity for your podcast because they are all fused together. Legacy is something that you inherit, and it is your genetic information and how you program. Because Ayurveda is not just about genetics, it's all about epigenetics. And we have painfully realized in modern medicine, it's not about the genome, it's all about epigenome. So, what makes the
Exactly.
genes turn on and turn off, The way you live, the way you behave, the way you react, the way you think is what is more important. And I think when we talk about science of life, that how you learn from your parents, your ancestors, upbringing, the positive attitude, the optimism, the health conscious lifestyle. Because I think where we miss the bus, as I look from an outsider in Western medicine, is where we fail to make people participate in their own health and well-being. And this science is all about what can you do for yourself on a daily basis. What do
Yeah.
you eat? When do you exercise? When do you go to sleep? How you think, how you meditate, how you relax, what kind of entertainment ideas, how you cultivate your relationship. And in the longevity science, suddenly this is becoming a forefront understanding that why people live longer and healthier because of all of this. So we have come a full circle in medicine to understand that the lifespan is important, but the health span is even more important.
Right. And just explain a little bit to the viewers and listeners the difference between lifespan and health span.
I think the lifespan is you are living longer, you're taking pharmaceuticals, you're having a lot of interventions. The quality of life is not that good. You can't walk, you can't breathe properly. You're just kept alive and you're living longer, but the quality of life is not there. But the health span is where your sensory faculties are intact, you are active, you are energetic, you are able to carry out conversation and remember things, what happened 40, 50 years ago. And there is zeal and enthusiasm about life, which is still intact. And I see Dr. Sheila Patel's father, and he is 85 plus, maybe close to 90 now, but he is able to walk, make new friendships on a daily basis. He has a lot of way to learn even the new technology through his iPad and WhatsApp group and this and that. So when people are doing that, that is what I call it as health span. And I think it is not about just staying alive, but keeping the zeal of life alive.
And I think that's, if we look at today, right, traditional medicine, the system that we're you know basically talking about today for lifespan, like traditional medicine does a great job with lifespan, right? With helping prolong life in emergency situations. With um, there's some sort of emergency accident or some sort of quick surgery. That was basically what traditional medicine was created to do, whereas wasn't necessarily meant for health span, right? That's where Ayurveda or functional medicine or longevity medicine are now coming into play, right? Because that is truly what um, is impacting and making a change in health span, and helping you live that longer life with the absence of disease. That I think are real key differentiators between the traditional medical system and basically what we're talking about in terms of functional medicine, longevity medicine, or even Ayurveda, right? That those are the key areas that are really helping extend that health span.
Yeah, I think a big reason people are seeking health systems outside of the conventional medical system is because it's incomplete. It's very useful, as you mentioned, for acute care, acute illness. Like when the body's systems have gone very awry, we can pull people back. ICU medicine is incredible. Again, we can save lives in that way, the body, and we focus on the body's systems and do really an amazing job with that. Infections, right? There's one problem. There's a bacteria or microbe of some sort. There's a very specific medication, and then that can take care of that. So it's a very linear sort of way of doing things. But we know now, and Ayurveda always recognizes that we are whole systems. Everything's connected to everything else, and especially in chronic disease. We have to address the whole body, the whole system at once. So this system that we have of this specialist and that specialist and that specialist, and they're only looking at one part of the body. I, as a primary care physician, see people back and they end up on a medicine for this and a medicine for that and a medicine for that. And then it's kind of my job to look at the whole system and say, how is this affecting the rest of your body? And that was inherent in the Ayurvedic system and way of teaching is when you give someone a therapy, you have to think about how it's affecting the whole system. So I think we need more whole systems research, and there are people out there that are looking at that, or having more of an appreciation.
And I think the low tech versus high tech, because some of the things that we recommend to our patients, and they think that, God, why didn't I think about this before, or uh, why nobody told me about this?
Yes.
And me and Sheila co-authored this book that is to be released on October 28th about awakened sleep and understanding the value and the importance of sleep, because we are all programmed biologically to sleep better. And if I have to make a bold statement, that sleep is one of the most potent anti-inflammatory activity one will ever do. Sleep is one of the most potent immunomodulatory activity one would ever do in their lifetime. If at all, sleep and inflammation are the sleep and immunity, or autoimmunity is the biggest inflammation, are the problem that we see currently. And sleep regulates both of them, inflammation and modulates your immunity at the same time. Why don't we time this, which doesn't cost you a penny, to do it proper? When I say low tech intervention, the giving value and importance to something that the body needs to do, to eat the right thing at the right time, to exercise, to move the body parts at the given time. And these are super low tech interventions, but there's enough science to back this up, that we can tell our patients very confidently that why do you need to schedule time for yourself. And that's the reason why Ayurveda is all about self-care rituals. That's what it is. You participate in your own health and well-being. So I think everything that we're trying to do is trying to bridge the ancient wisdom with the practicality of the modern lives.
When it comes to sleep too, I'll just add that it's also very important. I would say probably the most important thing as far as longevity, because two things happen. We're cleaning out, all of the junk, all the waste in the brain and the body, and we're regenerating tissues. So sleep is a very active process, and those things are needed to live a long life.
Yeah, no, you guys mentioned two big parts, right? We have to view health and wellness and longevity as whole body wellness, right? Looking at all the systems. It's not one system doesn't impact the other, right? And you could have the best diet, you could exercise every day, you could take all the right supplements, do all the right things. But to your point, if you're not focusing on sleep, right, just how big of an impact that is. And a lot of people think these days, functional medicine is, for people with money, or longevity medicine, you got to have money, but it's not, right? Because sleep is one of the most powerful things that we can have, right? And so, Dr. Suhas, if you can kind of just go a little bit more in depth about just what one bad night of sleep can do to somebody and how that impacts the rest of their systems.
Well, just to give you an idea, that 1 in 3 adults suffer from problems falling asleep. 1 in 4 adults actually suffer from some kind of an obstructive sleep apnea of some kind. 1 in 8 adults suffer from restless leg syndromes and things like that. So we are talking about 1/3 of the humanity, which is afflicted, adults, I would say, with sleep situations. So that's number one. The very interesting thing that the subconscious mind that is related with that comes into play in terms of sleep, and the environment that, when finally you are within yourself with your own thoughts, kind of affect your sleep and can put you into a state of restlessness, anxiety, maybe even depression, because you are confronting your own thought. There was a recent article that came out in Atlantic, which was a research study that people would prefer getting electric shocks rather than being alone by themselves. So we go to this place where it is dark and you are alone, and somniphobia, that's the term what we use, where your fear of being alone and not able to fall asleep. And how many people that we see every day in our practice who suffer from that? And you name it. A spectrum of autoimmune conditions can come from it. A rampant situation with chronic inflammation can develop because of lack of sleep. The REM debt can put you into a state of so many metabolic imbalances. Even one night that you can't sleep properly for a healthy individual can put them into a pre-diabetic state. Just one night of not sleeping for a normal healthy individual can put them into a pre-diabetic situation. So you're talking about immune dysfunction. You're talking about weight gain. I wrote my earlier book, which was called as The Hot Belly Diet. When I was researching about the book, one of the things that was striking to me, and I made a couple of statements in that book which were very interesting, which state that eat late to gain some weight and sleep late to gain some weight. And if you're eating late and sleeping late, then you're doomed. And at that time, or even now, about 60-70% of the country does both. And no matter how much you try to lose weight or how much you try to do anything, it disrupts the circadian rhythm completely. And circadian disruption is one of the main reasons for so many chronic diseases, including cognitive situations, Alzheimer's, dementia, neurological problems, metabolic disorders, uh, so forth and so on. So Ayurveda has actually given uh, diet, sleep, exercise as the three pillars of health. And we can't talk enough about, from a functional medicine perspective, that diet, sleep, and exercise are the three pillars. And funny thing is, they all depend upon each other. If you eat well, then you sleep well. If you sleep well, you have enough energy to do exercise. And if you're pleasantly tired, then you fall asleep and all that cycle. So I think that is so important. And one of the ways that we are paying attention to is telling our clients to to time their sleep properly, and the evening ritual, what you do before sleep, will decide the tone of your sleep, the quality of your sleep. So that is the reason why the purpose of Awaken Sleep, the book that me and Sheila wrote, is about what you do an hour or so before sleep can really dictate not only your sleep but the next day, because we always say a good day begins the night before. And so everything that you decide, or the choices that you make, the decisions that you make, everything depends upon how good and well rested your mind and nervous system is.
Wow, no, I think eh, that's huge, right? I mean, it goes back to what we were saying. All systems are interconnected, um, and I like to think on my side, right, is that 80% of the results typically come from 20% of the work, right? And that 20% focusing on diet, focusing on sleep, focusing on your exercise and movement, stress management, right? Those are all things that don't take a lot of work, right? That we're doing every day, that we just got to put a little bit of effort into it, right? That's a lot easier than down the road dealing with illness, right? People want to talk about, well, being, healthy again is comes at a cost. Well, so does an illness, right? So which problem do you want to have, right? Putting the time and effort just to get outside and go for a walk, getting that daily sunlight exposure, meditating, breath work, right? Those are all things that don't cost anything, right? It just takes a little bit of time, a little mindfulness, but it does come with being intentional about your day and how you want to, really take that next step in, being healthy. Um, so I kind of want to take a step back and just kind of talk about your guys' journeys, right? How you got to Ayurveda. With both of you guys. But Dr. Suhas, if you want to talk to me about or give us, how did you fall into Ayurveda? Like, was there a pivotal moment or like a personal experience that put you down that path?
I wish I had an interesting story that I got sick and I recovered and things like that, but there was nothing like that. I was born and raised in a typical traditional Vedic family where studying Sanskrit, learning about Vedic scriptures, including Ayurveda, was a way of life. Living Ayurveda was another way of life. Where I grew up, I was born and brought up in India. That's where I studied, that's where I went to school. And I consciously chose to study Ayurvedic medicine. I did my MD in Ayurvedic internal medicine. And that was all the choice that the courses that designed were were actually a blend and a fusion of so many traditional Vedic sciences, including yoga, Ayurveda, astrology, the science of building, architecture, integration of Vedic sciences, and then specialization in Ayurvedic medicine. So that's what I studied. And so it was something, an extension to what how I was living, what I was doing, and if I can create a professional work which was based about that. So happened to meet my lovely wife, who's also an Ayurvedic physician, and we started and set up our clinic in India, where we were practicing the rural part of India, helping hundreds of patients on a daily basis sometimes. And I happened to got an invitation to come and work with His Holiness Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, who was the founder of the Transcendental Meditation Movement. He was based in Holland, and he was famous as the guru of Beatles. And that's where me and Dr. Manisha, we joined him in his organization in Holland, and he made us travel around the globe talking about yoga, Ayurveda, meditation, and I actually interacted with numerous physicians in different kind of setting. So you go to South Korea, it's different than Lebanon. Lebanon is different than Brazil. Brazil is different than any other European countries, Scandinavian countries, Hong Kong. So when you go to 39 different countries and interact with so many healthcare professionals, you actually really look back at your upbringing, your studying, what you have studied, and how valuable that is, and how that can be easily applied to almost entire humanity, no matter where you go. So I think that created a little bit more conviction in my mind about how valuable this science is. And then I interacted with numerous experts in this field, and happened to settle down in US and build my own practice. And here I am. But I think this is, to this date, is something that we believe in, this way of life. We share that with our patients. We are both Ayurvedic physicians. Our son is an Ayurvedic doctor. Our daughter is a naturopathic physician. So I think understanding the value of health and its implication in almost every area of life is so important. So I think that has become a life journey for me so far.
No, I mean, it's to your point, it's every part of life, right? Health, without health, what do we really have?
Not-
It's, people, can have all the problems in the world until they have that health problem, and then it's just one problem. So I think obviously, your experience, your journey here, your wife's journey to where she is, now your son's, right? Truly, you guys believe in what you do and this way of life, and it shows up in your work, your books, and what you guys are doing on a day to day for your clients or patients, right? Dr. Sheila, what about yourself? How'd you end up in Ayurveda?
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but essentially, I my parents come from India, but I was born in the States and raised here, and I had this kind of split personality. In the home we had very traditional food and eating, and again, my mom would make turmeric paste on the stove if we sprained our ankles, and put that on, and she just knew, and we had stomach aches or whatever, she said, oh, take this, chew on these seeds, this is good for your digestion, etc. And you just, as Dr. Suhas mentioned, many people just grow up learning those things. They didn't learn any Ayurveda in a formal way. And then my dad was very spiritual, so we learned the spiritual sort of philosophy that Ayurveda comes from. And there were lots of books in my home on yoga, and I learned to meditate as a child. So none of this was foreign to me, but I would step outside of the home, and nobody around me was thinking or doing any of these things, and especially not once I started along the scientific path. I loved science, I loved biology. I knew fairly early on in my career that I wanted to help people, and so medicine was very fascinating to me. But as soon as I started that path, and especially in medical school and residency, now this was granted 30 years ago, but I think it's still that way, more so than I'd like. You just learn the reductionist scientific model. You learn that there's only one way of knowing things, and that's something that I've recently been thinking about a lot, because these traditional healing systems all over the world had ways of knowing that didn't rely on this kind of modern scientific method. which is good for telling us and studying certain things, but certainly not everything. And so you sort of learn that, or, because attendings and other people criticize these other systems as superstitious or woo-woo or illogical, or there's no evidence for it. Even a neutral person would say, well, there's no evidence for it. But again, we were only taught one way of knowing things. And if there wasn't a randomized control trial that showed this XYZ, then we were like, oh, I don't know. And so I kind of forgot about a lot of the things I'd learned in my home and in my culture. And then even my pendulum swung to almost being a skeptic, like, honestly, and so I understand when I talk to people when they're skeptical, I understand why they are. And so I try to educate people and other physicians that I meet because, as I mentioned, once I got out into practice, I realized, oh, we have some good tools, but I only have a couple in my toolbox. And as a primary care physician, people coming with all kinds of things. And as soon as you get enough experience, you realize the same medicine has a very different, effect on 10 different people. And all of the things that you learn once you get out and practice. And I'm just a naturally curious person. And I luckily had this background where I thought, how did people heal? How did what would Ayurveda have said about this? And so that led me on a long, wonderful path back to Ayurveda. And it's an infinite body of knowledge because it's based on the knowledge of nature and the universe. And so, and even some of the terminology, now that I'm really understanding it and reading it all again, some of the terms really refer to cellular processes that are going on, cellular metabolism, the mitochondrial energy production. Like every time I dive deeply into something, there's some explanation in Ayurveda, except we didn't recognize that's what they were talking about, like in a Western, language. So I just love, learning. There's an infinite amount to learn in Ayurveda. And the other thing I'll end with, one of the other things I really appreciate the difference. And, this isn't a bad thing, but in medicine, in Western medicine, we learn things and then we learn new things and the newest thing and the newest thing. And so you sometimes have to throw out what you learned. Like many of my medical school books, I wouldn't refer to them as a reference because some of that may have been not applicable anymore because we have new information. And although some things some things obviously are the same, but you never really feel like you have a complete grasp. Whereas in Ayurveda, you learn these foundational principles, which Dr. Suhas and I both have learned to sort of simplify to teach and, to the Western population. So you can teach very foundational principles, aligning yourself with circadian rhythms, eating, like we know now, like plant-based, fresh, whole foods, moving your body, and we can personalize it and speak to people in a way that makes sense to them. And the more you learn, the more it builds on that knowledge. You never have to throw out what you learned, your foundational learning. So, these are just little kind of nuances, but it keeps me learning, and learning more about Ayurveda and learning from Dr. Suhas, who has so much knowledge. And it's been a great path.
There's an interesting point I would like to add what Dr. Patel just now said, that medicine has always been a noble profession. Is that right? It's a noble profession because you heal people and you meet them at their lowest moment in life when you are sick or tired or suffering or you are in pain. And you help them, you hold their hands, you lend your shoulder for them to cry upon. You build a mutual trust, rapport, faith in each other's ability as a friend, as a philosopher, as a guide, as a mentor to the patient, where they feel better. And you trust in each other. So whatever I'm suggesting, you believe in that, you follow that, and we come back. So that connection is so important to address the whole person, because the patient should feel that you are heard. And I really respect your journey, Zach, also, because the reason why you came up with this is because what you saw your mom go through. And see the limitations of the medicines. And when you understand the whole person and then treat that whole person, then everything comes out. And that metaphysical, spiritual aspect of healing was overlooked, as Dr. Sheila said, because of the evidence-based medicine. And not long ago, I'm talking about 200-300 years ago, the licenses for the doctors to practice was issued by the church. The church used to issue the doctors because the hospitals were the temples of God, and the nurses and the sisters took care of you in the house of God. And that was all in the crutches of church and religion and things like that. And we desperately tried to get out of it, disconnect everything from spirituality and religion. And we have come a full circle in understanding that we have to acknowledge the consciousness-based living and understanding, with not only just the polarities of the mind and body, but bringing in the spiritual dimension to heal the opposite qualities of the mind and body. So I think at this junction point where medicine is, Ayurveda becomes even more relevant and more practical, I would say.
Oh, 100%, right? And it's, Dr. Sheila, you mentioned how some people might call this woo-woo or unscientific. And, it just blows my mind to think, okay, Ayurveda's been around for 5,000 years, right? Yet you can consider a prescription pad as normal, right? You're masking the symptom. You're going into the system thinking that it's looking out for you and doing what's best. And obviously, my personal experience and my family's experience with my mom was just a huge eye opener, just to how slow the system is to update, right? How against it is, how against change it is, uh, to improve and get better. Look at the newest science. Look at the most updated data, right? Because we're still stuck in a sick care model that was established back in the 1950s. Um, Yet, there's a new iPhone every year, right? Cars drive itself. AI is, changing the world, but we're still stuck on this old model, right? And I think that's one of the things that, in Ayurveda and functional medicine, integrated medicine, where it's constantly evolving, right? It's constantly trying to look at what is the newest, science say, what's the data say, but also getting back to the roots, eating real foods, right? If it doesn't grow in the ground, swim in water or walk on the ground, put that back on the shelf, right? That's not for you, right? So getting back to the basics of eating real food, daily exercise, having that community and that sense of purpose, which is something I think we've really gotten far away from, right? So, you know, I guess for the next question I have for you guys, um, taking the Ayurveda, philosophies and the principles, what are some of the foundational daily practices that, listeners can start today, right? That will help support them in their longevity career or path, their longevity path, or just, if they are dealing with something that they really want to start improving.
I'll start and I'll let Dr. Sheila add to this, especially for sleep, because nowadays in an information age, it is so difficult that there are about 7,000 apps about sleep when you go to an Apple store. If you just click the word sleep disorders or sleep problems on Google, you get about 900 million searches. So it's a problem. And you look at any social media, Instagram, TikTok, there are people who are touting everything. Mouth tape and weighted blanket and perfect sleep mattress and perfect sleep pillow and this and that, because we know that this is a problem. And we understand that this is linked to so many things. So I think we have narrowed it down to few basic things which are 100% backed by science. Number one, if you want to improve the quality of sleep, exposure to your morning sunlight is very important. The more you are exposed to sunlight during the day, the better you sleep in the night. And it's the simple Ayurvedic principle which is totally validated by the cutting edge research. Time restricted feeding and eating, where you have to eat a lighter breakfast, you have to eat a lighter dinner, which is an Ayurvedic principle. When the sun is rising in the morning, you don't have to eat a heavy breakfast. It's a tender sunlight outside. So your digestive fire, your Agni is weak. So you eat a lighter breakfast. When sun is prominent in the middle of the day, at its zenith in the peak. Then you eat the main meal of the day during the day, which you are happily able to digest for the rest of the day. You walk it off. And in the evening, you have a lighter dinner close to sunset. And so it's the same thing. The sunlight is fading. You want to eat lighter meal. And you have to eat at least 2-3 hours before meals and try to avoid any snacking in between the meals. So time restricted feeding, it's our own way of time. We are not talking about fasting for 20 hours a day or something like that. Very commonsensical. It has to be something that you can live with the practical advice. Number 3 is a cardiovascular exercise, maybe at zone 2 level, where you are moving your body part and you're increasing your heart rate in cardiovascular exercise, not for 1, 2, 3 hours. I'm talking about 20 to 30 minutes. Zone 2 cardiovascular exercise daily, 20 to 30 minutes, and a decent quality breath work that you need to learn how to breathe and how to use breathing to relax your mind and diffuse your stress, and that you should learn to do this 1 to 2 minutes several times during the day, especially before you go to sleep. Some properly learned breath work, which we have mentioned in our book Awake and Sleep, is so important. So these are the 4 simple things that I would recommend people to kind of improve their sleep. And we have mentioned sleep as an extension to your meditation practice. So if you're a meditator and you can get into a meditative state of sleep before you go, all of those things would be helpful. And the evening ritual is so important. What you do, the last thing that you do before you go to sleep will affect the quality of the sleep. So avoiding blue light, avoiding any stressful conversations over the phone or checking your social media at that time. All of those things are very simple, practical tools. Sheila, you want to add anything?
Yeah. I mean, that's great. Those are the foundations, right? Nutrition, movement, sleep, and then emotions, emotional regulation. We can tie that with stress, because that's, those two things kind of have to do with the mind. I think so few people realize how much of their fatigue is mental fatigue. Yesterday, I saw patients all day yesterday. I think I told this to 4 or 5 patients, because people come in with fatigue and they think it's their thyroid or they're this. And of course, we check all of those things. You have to. And then they want to know, we really focus on the physical body, but, they're worrying, they're over busy, we're constantly overstimulating our minds. And so I tell them the brain uses more glucose and more energy than any other organ in the body. And people are always surprised by that. There is a thing such as mental fatigue. And especially if you're having stressful conversations, unhealthy relationships, you can't diffuse. We're learning all this science around healthy social relationships, keep us healthy, right? And actually reduce inflammation. So the mental space, I spend more and more time in my career now talking to people about that. And adding on to what Dr. Suhas said, throughout the day, we have a whole chapter in the book, because I've realized over time in learning the science of the senses, in Ayurveda, there's something called 5-sense therapy, where throughout the day, you're taking care of your senses and you're being mindful of sensory input. And when I like the science. So when I understood why Ayurveda says the senses are the gateway to the mind and to the nervous system, actually, all sensory input has to get digested and processed. And all of it actually through the nervous system goes directly to the emotional brain, the limbic brain. And there are structures in that area of the brain that have to do with our level of our state of arousal, whether we're sleepy, whether we're alert, our memory. It's very close to the structures that also secrete all the hormones that control the body, the amygdala, the stress part of the brain. So when we're constantly overloaded by sensory input, noise, just during this conversation, there was like 2 or 3 planes that went by, cars, and that's part of modern society. Constant light, constant screen time, the smell, all of the senses, right? So I teach, Ayurveda teaches us that, and I teach this to my patients, find practices throughout the day to decompress your senses, your sensory input. So that can be silence. How often do we spend time in silence, right? It can be, again, decreasing the screen time, but also looking at beautiful imagery like nature. And of course, it's best to be out in nature, but we can bring plants or pictures. I always have pictures of nature around me, the colors green and blue. There is something to all of this that people have, known for thousands of years. It can cool down, the vision. And then, all of the senses, again, like you can use aromatherapy to calm down at night. And it has an immediate effect. And again, there are neural pathways we can describe that give validation to all of these things. And so, I teach people how to have some sensory breaks throughout the day, bringing in good sensory input. And then how do you focus on withdrawing sensory input before bed? Because that's a big obstruction to getting good sleep, is just an overactivated nervous system. So breath work is incredible for calming the nervous system. But if you go all day and ratcheting up, it's going to take a lot more to calm the nervous system before bed than if you're doing, as Dr. Suhas said, a minute or two throughout the day of breath work, just sitting in silence. By the time bedtime comes, you're not that overstimulated, So when I explain this to people, these are really aha things, because not everybody understands this over arousal of the nervous system and how much, number one, it disrupts sleep. Number two, it can disrupt digestion. Number three, it can create inflammation when we're in sympathetic overdrive. So for me, that really is a root cause for a lot of different issues. So I spend more time talking about that as well.
Yeah, I think in today's society, we live in such high stress environments, whether it's work or, going from work to going home to basically have to cook dinner, for our families, and, just to your point, constantly overstimulated. Our nervous systems are just, again, just overstimulated and overworked, where we're just in this chronic stress, right? Where it keeps us locked into this fight or flight state, which you're just getting endless amounts of cortisol nonstop. And obviously you guys know what high cortisol does. It spikes blood sugar, wrecks your sleep, disrupts your hormones, to where your point, where it's just being able to take that time, right, to slow down, right, take a breath. And I think I'm seeing a lot more of people talking about breath work. Is there a certain framework of breath work? I know there's box breathing. There's the 4x4x4. Like, is there one that you guys recommend?
So I usually, if it's somebody who's familiar with yoga or this or that, there are all many yogic breath techniques. So I'll teach them or remind them alternate nostril breathing. There's other types of breathing depending. And again, as a practitioner, you can tell sometimes what type of breathing people need for what's out of balance. But I'll tell you what I teach most people is very, very simple, coherent breathing. Breathing in for 4 or 5 seconds, breathing out for 4 or 5 seconds. Sometimes I'll put a 1 or 2 second breath hold just at the end of the inhalation, because when people are overwhelmed and you try to teach them some very complex breath technique, they're not going to do it, right? It's always you're adding overwhelm to overwhelm. So I just tell people, can you count to 4 or 5? And when people are stuck in stress breathing, even, and you have to teach people how to breathe, as to Dr. Suhas's point, you have to properly teach people how to breathe, because if they breathe in for some seconds like this and their shoulders are going up and they're only breathing from the top, that's really not, creating the parasympathetic tone that we want it to. And so, relax your abdominal muscles and, breathe slowly. And some people can't even breathe in for 4 seconds because their diaphragm is so weak. So then we'll start, at 3 or whatever they can do. But ideally, you want to get your breath down to 5 to 7 breaths a minute. So just breathing in for 5 seconds, breathing out for 5 seconds, breathing in. So everyone can remember 5 and 5. And I tell them 5, 5, 5. Easy. So do 5 inhale, 5 exhale for 5 minutes in the morning and in the evening. So that's 10 minutes a day. And most research shows that if you do at least 10 minutes a day, you can certainly do more than that you'll start to reset your nervous system within 2 to 3 months.
And so it's just one of those simple frameworks of just simple breathing, right? It's not a shiny gadget. It's not the newest supplement. Something as simple of, taking that time to, take a moment for yourself each day focus on breathing and resetting that nervous system, like you just mentioned. I think that's huge. That people try to make health and longevity more complex than it needs to be.
The funny thing is, Zach, that the pace of life is so bad that we are becoming more dumb. We are becoming so disconnected with our signals of the body. So it's ironic that we have to teach people how to breathe, we how to sleep, how to eat, because these are the most natural things that every species does though. But for us to go and take classes of how to eat and how to sleep and how to breathe is really ironic. And the funny thing about all this is that this intense pace of life affects your breathing. There's a term nowadays that we use called as email apnea or text apnea. So if you get a text, you hold your breath until you finish reading it, or you get an email, you hold your breath until you read it. So imagine how many texts you get during the day, how many emails that you respond throughout the day, because whether you like it or not, it affects your breathing. And we know that there's a direct connection between your breathing and your thoughts and your mind. So there's a Sanskrit sutra which says chale vate chale chittam nishchale nishchalo bhave. So when the breath wanders, the mind wanders. When the breath is steady, the mind is steady. And so if you're disrupting both of them, then you don't know where to start. So using breath as a link to calm the mind and using mind to focus on your breath to calm and steady the breath is the same thing, that how you regulate your HRV. All the gadgets that we try to look at, sleep and all the activities related with heart, can be simply linked with the state of how you are aware of your internal state. Your interoception is something that we are teaching. And I think it's very important because um, sleep is a natural vega in Ayurveda. You say it's an urge. It's an urge that you can't control. Like hunger, uh, you can be hungry for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and afterwards you can't force people to eat. But sleep is not like that. If you are sleepless for 3, 4 nights, you will be forced to sleep. You will be forced to sleep. Uh, if you're hungry, it will not force you to eat. But sleep, you will fall asleep behind a wheel. You will doze off no matter where you are. So it is such a powerful urge that if you don't respect, it will grab your horns and make you do that. And the connection that Dr. Patel was telling about is with the gut and and sleep, that is often overlooked in modern medicine. We often limited sleep to understanding the stages of sleep and the mechanics of sleep, but we really still don't understand the total mystical nature of sleep as per the ancient medicine, I would say. And the connection between your gut and your digestive state with sleep is huge. So I think when you improve the gut health, many people start sleeping better. And as we know, and this year's Nobel Prize went to three physiologists and researchers who talk about the role of the T cells in autoimmunity. And we understand this very well, that when you are eating food well, you're digesting and you're pooping well, then your immunity is better, because 80% of the immune system is in the gut itself. So the connection between the gut and the brain and helping you sleep. So I often tell my patients, if you have enough fiber in your diet and you're pooping well and the color of your poop is changing, you will start sleeping better. And they think that I'm not giving them a magical herb or this or that to help them sleep. But no, we just correct their gut health and they start correcting their constipation, and the formation of stool is better. The sleep automatically gets better.
Now, I think people are surprised to learn that there's over 100 million neurons in our gut, right? It's why people call it the second brain, where that gut brain axis, that's controlled by the vagus nerve. People don't really realize just how important, to your point, that gut brain connection really is, right? So if your gut's inflamed, it's leaky, has the wrong bacteria, right? That those types of signals, inflammation, are being then sent to your brain. So having that mind body connection to know, okay, if I'm having some issues with my gut, most likely it's going to impact my brain, which ultimately is going to impact my sleep. So it's how all the inner systems connect, that I think we've really gotten away from. Um, Obviously, in the traditional medical space, where you have all the different specialists, like we talked about earlier. So it's again just bringing it back to the basics of basically what Ayurveda has known for over 5,000 years, right? Nutrition, sleep, meditation, breath work, constant movement, is really what we've gotten disconnected with. That you guys obviously are spreading your message, and we're trying to spread over here. But no, I think all of these are super valuable, invaluable points that people can really start taking away from today, and not cost them much of anything, right?
Yeah, one of the things I love too is when I worked at, when the Chopra Center, we had a physical space, we'd have thousands and thousands of people coming through, and we would teach Ayurvedic lifestyle, what we were talking about today. And many people would say, oh, that reminds me of what my grandma used to say, or, oh, I know about Peruvian medicine, or any sort of traditional healing system. And they're like, this is what we would say, because it's based on the laws of nature and how nature functions. And whether we like it or not, we can't change that, right? We can try to. And so
Right.
it's really beautiful, and it really connects us to the planet more. And like, we realize that is us too. And it just it really just creates an expansion of our being and who we are, not just, spiritually, but also our physical body is actually the earth. And I think it just then is natural. We become good stewards of the earth, and so there's just, it's better physical health, better mental health, but also better, spiritual well-being on this path. Yeah.
I love that. All right. So you guys have a book release coming up on October 28th. Can you share a glimpse of that upcoming book, the Awakened Sleep, and what the readers can expect?
Well, I think awakened sleep is your gateway to higher states of consciousness and awareness. And one simple tip I would like to give to our sleep deprived nation is the source of creativity is the source of consciousness. So whatever you want to manifest in your life, you need to put those seeds of what you want to see to sprout in your deep sleep. So many fascinating inventions have happened in deep sleep. So especially in the night, your evening sleep routine and sleep hygiene is so important. So clear the weeds and plant the seeds. And if you are able to do that, you will see yourself leading a very happy, purposeful, meaningful, and abundant life. So I think sleep is your gateway to self-realization and an extension to your meditation practice. So uh, we can have many more sessions with you, Zach, because we can go on and talk about so many different facets from where we can link sleep to health and
Yeah.
longevity. But this is a good start, and we are very, very happy that you invited me and Dr. Sheila to talk about our new book on your wonderful podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No, yeah. Thank you guys for taking the time. Here's what I took from today. If today's conversation sparked something in you, here's what I want you to do right now. Pick one strategy, one insight, one small action you heard today, and commit to it this week. Excellence isn't built in moments. It's built in the daily decisions that compound over time. Remember, you're not just building a healthier body or a more successful career. You're building a legacy that will outlast you. And that starts with the standards you set today. Thanks for listening to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. If this episode was valuable, first subscribe so you never miss an episode. Then leave us a review to help more people find these conversations. And finally, share it with someone who you think needs to hear it. Until next Tuesday, keep raising the bar, keep pushing your limits, and keep stacking days. I'm Zach Dancel. Your legacy starts now.